Amazon just killed OpenAI, and Apple doesn't care one bit.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk all things AI, tech, Apple, and more throughout the week. If you're enjoying these videos, we really appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. And today, Andrew is joining us
In studio. For once, I don't have to be in some kind of hotel room. That's the worst situation ever. I hate doing that. But I'm glad we can make it work.
Yeah, thank you for doing it.
Yeah, of course. But it's not my favorite position to be in, especially... I'm usually recording at like 1 or 2 in the morning when Ryan's, recording at the afternoon over here. So anyways, I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to give Matt a little vacation here in Louisiana and take some spots for him while he's gone.
And so today we're talking about Amazon. I think this, the kind of business AI is one of your special interests almost. And so this is very interesting to see. There's a new Nova LLM in Amazon Web Services, which, if you don't know, Amazon Web Services is a huge part of Amazon's business. I think a lot of people just think of Amazon, the seller of packages, of course, because that's what we see. But this is a huge part of their business, all of their web services. So basically, them implementing LLMs and AI into that is a way for them to take on the competition and also get ahead of people like OpenAI that want to be able to do this in the future. So what is your take on all of this?
Yeah, so just to remind people, AWS is 62% of Amazon's revenue. Isn't that crazy when we all just think of them with sending the products and things like that? It's 17% of their total income, but 62% of their revenue. Oh, wow. So it is the moneymaker, the cash cow of Amazon is AWS here. And if you don't know what it does, it's a hosting platform for apps. It's a hosting platform for websites. And almost everyone uses AWS. All your like big, like Twitter, Facebook, and every big website uses AWS.
If you're gonna download something and it goes to a link real quick before it downloads, check that link. It oftentimes is .aws in there. Yes.
And so, all these things so it's used by almost every company. It's already integrated into everyone's systems. And right now, for a lot of things, if you want to use ChatGPT or you want to use an LLM in general, you have to use an API, send it to ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will send you the result back. So imagine you're talking, I have my Shopify store. I want to use ChatGPT to as a chatbot so it could talk to customers and have my customer data and things like that. Now I have to send with every one of those requests where someone sends a message to me, it has to send that API to ChatGPT. ChatGPT responds to them, and then I can monitor that and get to it when it gets to a level where I actually need human input, right? So they'll get to their problem, I can answer it or whatever, right? And so right now, there's a lot of options for this. So you can use ChatGPT, you can use Claude or any other, LLM. Meta's Llama is like open source. You can use any of these things. But none of them at this point are integrated into AWS until now. And so now, if it's integrated into the system, I don't think anyone is going to have a reason in any of these things, as long as it's a good LLM that responds, just as well as ChatGPT or some of these other things. There's not going to be a good reason anymore to use ChatGPT. And we think of ourselves as like the enterprise users are $20 a month or something like that. That's not true. So these big websites get charged every time they use an API request. So imagine that chat back and forth took 20 API requests. You're going to get charged for those 20 API requests. And so it's per API request that we get charged by these things. And so if that's just integrated into Amazon and they can undercut ChatGPT because now you're paying for AWS and you're paying for your hosting there and you're paying for other stuff like that you're using in that, and now you just add your LLM package on and it's cheaper than ChatGPT and it works about the same. There's literally no reason for these enterprise companies to be using ChatGPT unless it does something significantly different, or if it does something that the other things can't do, but you can use your baseline LLM for 90% of your tasks, and then that one thing that ChatGPT can do that the other ones can't do, you send out one API request instead of 100, and you get your cheaper result, even though ChatGPT might be more expensive or not integrated.
Yeah, it seems like so. If I'm understanding it correctly, you have companies that are using AWS and then also using ChatGPT kind of separately, right? And there's a lot of companies doing that type of thing right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a list right here that I just saw that is companies that are using ChatGPT's API services include Snapchat, Instacart, Duolingo, Coca-Cola, Quizlet, Shopify, Block, Canva. So many companies that we've heard of.
Big
Yeah.
companies. It's not like us, with our websites
Yeah.
integrating ChatGPT in. And these companies get millions of queries every day for these things, So it's not just like the entry level user. That's why I think I am obsessed with these things, is because like this really will determine whether these companies succeed or not. It's not if we sign up for their $20 subscription or their new subscription that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's if these enterprise companies really integrate it into their entire systems and have to pay every time they get used.
And the thing we kind of talk about a lot with Apple in regards to AI is even if they're a year or potentially 2 years behind in AI development, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to get people that excited to shift over or feeling the need to shift over any faster than that. And AI development is so quick and so impressive and scaling so exponentially that something like this, even if Amazon's a little behind ChatGPT, it's like you as a company, if it's that much easier to just sign up for AWS and get your services for this thing, and within 6 months or a year it's going to catch up to functionality that is available by doing two different things for more expensive right now, I think that, it's always going to win because it's just a integration it's seamless and you just sign up for the one thing.
Yeah, and you cut your bill in half, or however they're going to undercut them through this system. Yeah, it's crazy. And the other thing too is the other ChatGPT or OpenAI flagship product is Sora, and Nova just integrated a video generator, which is wild because video generators, image generators are everywhere, and they're all pretty good. Video generators are not everywhere. They're very specific. You got Runway, you got OpenAI Sora, but Sora is not open to the public yet, and a couple other stragglers, but nothing really is great yet.
Yeah.
And so you have them just introduce another video generator into the chat that could be used on an API level, like anytime you want it to be used.
Yeah.
Now, what does OpenAI have that anyone else doesn't have?
Well, they do have the 12 days of OpenAI. Which is something they're in the middle of right now as we're recording this, and more of them will have come out by the time this is released. But basically, Sam Altman announced on X that they're doing 12 live stream demos for OpenAI starting on the 5th, and they're going to release a bunch of different things each day. So one of the first ones we saw was a new kind of basically unlimited subscription to get all of their models, get faster compute for them, and it's $200 a month. So we've for a long time talked about these subscriptions and how much they're going to be. Would we be willing to pay $100 a month? This, as far as I'm understanding it, this is a subscription for like an individual for $200 a month, but for an individual that clearly needs to use this at a very high level very frequently and wants the best models available.
So first of all, I think we need to like write on a whiteboard all of my predictions for the future, because we've gotten two giant ones, which is one, super high price subscriptions, and number two is ChatGPT is going to start implementing ads. Two huge things we predicted 8 months ago when we were talking about these things. So listen to the All Future podcast if you want to know what the future is going to look like. That being said, they said this $200 tier subscription is mostly for research scientists and people at that level who need extra compute to do more detail-oriented, big research style projects. So this isn't what we sort of predicted in the agentic, like this can do a lot more things for you. It's more so like this will replace a human doing research for you at a very high level, or even maybe, be able to keep a lot of things in its brain a research like PhD assistant might not be able to do. So this is really interesting. I think a human costs whatever, a human PhD student costs 50, 60 grand a year if they're doing it as they're doing their PhD. If this costs, whatever.
2,400 a year?
Yeah. This is a no-brainer for those people, right? Like every college campus is going to have 1,000 of these subscriptions for every one of their professors, I see this as a great thing, and yet this is an easy sell to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm very curious to play with all the models that it has as well, because I think I've mostly been using 4.0, but then this has O1 and O1 Mini, and it kind of seems like, oh, I always want the best one, whatever the newest one is, but it's not actually always the case. There's all these different models that are optimized for different things. Some of them use less tokens, and you still have to kind of figure that out a little bit. But I guess for this subscription, it's like, use it all. It doesn't matter. You can use it as much as you want. Use all of our resources because you're paying us $200 a month.
What else do you want to see them announce? And this is probably going to go up live tomorrow. So today is the 5th. That's we have the first day. And so, what else do you want to see them announce?
I want to see Sora. I want to see Sora give us some normal real-time video. And maybe that will still be just their own examples of it, but I want to see what that looks like, even though that's terrifying to me at the same time. And then probably Sora get released to where we can prompt it and at least do some fun demos, if not actually start using it for something useful.
That'd be really cool. I want voice integration for people to be in these things. So 11 Labs has their voice cloning software. I think that would be really interesting to integrate into ChatGPT and be able to use for something like Ryan sends me voice messages all the time. He'll talk into something. But what if you can use ChatGPT to go I can't talk right now, but send Andrew a message that says X, Y, and Z, and then send it to his phone. That would be super cool, interesting, and useful. And then it could be done in words in a way. Usually, you send that message because it's too much to type or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it could type it out for you. It could send it in your voice. And, that's not an instance where I'm going to care if it's really Ryan or not, And so I think adding that 11 Lab style voice cloning stuff would be cool. And then in the middle of that, I want to see OpenAI's version of LM Studio to get their podcast level of stuff.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like it'd be that hard because the voice assistant is really good. So it'd just be adding the voice assistant, whatever they're doing there, just turn that into an audio file and turn whatever you're talking about into a podcast. Or I want 10 lessons on this subject, break them down into 10 audio podcasts that I can listen to throughout this next week.
Yeah, that's kind of the Google thing, right? They did the
LM Studio.
Oh, right.
LM Studio.
That's exactly what we were talking about. I guess I didn't make the connection.
I'm gonna double check this.
Notebook
Notebook LM.
Gotcha. So that's what you're talking about. But I guess it's Notebook LM is the Google term for that. But that's exactly what you're talking about. At first, when that came out, it seemed kind of scary. But that idea of we learn so much from a podcast and stuff, and if there isn't a podcast on the subject, and you can put in the info and it can synthesize it into a very digestible way for you to understand something quickly, that does sound very interesting to me.
Yeah. We're just talking. I've been on tour in Europe for the past month here, and there's a lot of people who can't read in the car. And so you're in a car for 6 hours. You're trying to, better yourself or do something with your day. You don't want to just sit there for 6 hours and do nothing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time we're listening to podcasts or doing something else. And, for those kinds of people or, people who are in a situation where they can't read or they're working out or something and you want to, there's not always a podcast about everything. And then there's not always a podcast about where you're at in a subject, So say you're a very beginner, there's not, there might be the podcast for the advanced person to talk about things at that level, but to get you there, it's kind of hard to find those things. So just having a private tutor podcast is something that I think they could really benefit from integrating, even though it already exists in the Google world.
Yeah. I guess the other thing we'd like to see for this 12 days is improvements to their news or their kind of their web searching thing, because that has been having reportedly some issues this week that it is definitely not reliable. They launched their Search GPT in October, and they said it can give you fast, timely answers with links to relevant web sources. I've been using it, and as an interface, it's incredible. But apparently it's doing some hallucinating, sometimes giving incredibly weird, just not even true, made-up answers. I think one was they were asking about presidential pardons and historical ones, and it was just making some of them up.
So I think what's happening here is, as a search tool, versus a search engine, it's still very good. It'll give you like the top 4 or 5 relevant answers. And then what I think they were doing here to test it is to actually try to get it to quote those articles it's looking at. And it is awful at that.
Yeah.
And so it would be misquoting articles. It would say it's from one article and it's not, it's from this other article. And then, like you're saying, it would just like totally miss facts and things like that. And so
I honestly experienced that too.
What did you try it with?
I think it was looking for like a specific Elon Musk quote, and then it would say he said this here because it was for my Tesla channel about something he said years ago about some product. And so I was trying to find the specific quote. I tried on Google, and then I was like, oh, I bet GPT could figure this out better. And it would say the quotes in this article, and then I clicked the article, searched through the whole article, and could not find it. You know,
Oh, no.
that kind of thing.
So I never thought the tool was designed for that. Did you think the tool was designed for stuff like that?
I guess just like I thought more detailed searching than I'm used to is what brought me to that kind of thing.
That's why I'm confused about this article, but it makes sense that if people are trying to use it in this way and that I never thought it was good at that to begin with. It's awful at like really specific things.
Yeah.
And in general, like if you ask really specific questions, like 2 specific questions, it's pretty bad. Or who said this or who said that, especially in real time stuff. Like it's not going out and searching the web and getting all the information from the web. Like that's not what it's doing.
Yeah.
So everything that's like trying to gather real time information is incredibly difficult. And I didn't think they were promoting to use it that way. But I can understand that if everyone thinks that that's how you're supposed to use it, and you get these kind of results, that it is awful to use that way.
It's like it answers, so it should work, right? If it's going to try to answer, that's kind of the idea.
The confirmation bias of this thing. It's just gaslighting the whole generation, you know, with its confident answering ability.
It is very interesting because that is the problem. And when you actually face it and don't think about it, like if you search something and then maybe it's something kind of trivial and unimportant, but you search it, it gives you a synthesized answer of its results, and then you now think that that's the truth. Then it turns out to be wrong. That's the scary thing about AI that everyone's worried about. So I guess with all of these tools, and especially this new search GPT, there's as we grew up learning, you have to vet your sources.
Do you think that's different than Google searching something and then that also being wrong? Because that's like a possibility too. Or there's things like on Wikipedia that are wrong. It's not often, or like I feel like, and then the mistakes are like, at least in my opinion, not like life threatening or something. Hopefully no one's like looking at Wikipedia to be a doctor or something like that. But
yeah, hopefully.
Wikipedia is much more edited and vetted than the average, ChatGPT answer or whatever. And then there's also hallucinations on top of that. So it's just getting stuff and then giving you an answer. But I guess my thing is like, you shouldn't be taking any real-time news source answer without fact-checking it.
Yeah.
Which is like, find 3 websites saying the same thing, or if it's just like a tweet from X, which is like 90% of what news is these days, just go to the tweet in X and see if that person actually said that or not.
Yeah, and then there is the community notes thing when it works on X. It seems to be good in certain scenarios. But yeah, basically, don't rely on Search GPT is the overarching theme of this thing. Make sure to check what its sources are. Are they reliable? And then, vet stuff against other stuff, especially when it really matters. I think you can kind of get a certain sense of when you can just take the information from ChatGPT versus when it's like, no, I need to verify that this is actually correct.
Yeah, and so what we're finding out here is that with Amazon taking over this space, integrating into everything else, Amazon might be a big winner in the cloud space where people are actually paying for the API usage of LLMs. I don't think anyone's even going to come close to dethroning Apple as the hardware provider space. I don't know what the difference is going to be, because you could just use a website with AWS on it and use all those LLMs exactly like you're doing. Right now, you can use your choice of any single LLM you want. And we're even talking about multiple action buttons in the future, which I also asked for and predict. I love it. I love just talking about this stuff and going like, oh, like all these shortcut buttons are awesome. Give me something with 10 shortcut buttons on it, and it'll be a more interesting product to use. But then I can use whatever LLM I want. And I think the next future prediction that producer Andrew will make is that everything's going to go local and more private. And that's why they pushed for 16 gigs of RAM in the M4. And so once we don't want any of these cloud servers to have any of our information, the only way to do that is to run the LLM locally. The only way to run the LLM locally is to have enough RAM to like sift through the LLM file and have the processing power to be able to give you an answer back.
Yeah.
And once we get computers with that sort of RAM and that sort of processing, then everyone's LLM is going to be on their machine and absolutely private. And that's what's coming in the next, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So basically all this to say, ChatGPT or OpenAI is always at the forefront of AI development, and we're seeing a bunch of developments this week, but we're always a little unsure as to how they're actually going to sustain into the future.